there's just some information up at the moment about how to use the virtual room if you haven't used the virtual room before. So you obviously seem to be okay with turning your microphone on and off mute, which is awesome. And it does look like we've got one more person jumping in. So yeah, we'll keep everyone on mute and with cameras off for the time being, just to save that bandwidth. Yeah, if you have any questions though, feel free to turn your microphone on or jump into the chat that should be on the right hand side of your screen. Yep, I'm just going to wait until Sam joins us in the virtual room before jumping too far ahead. Awesome. Hi Sam, can you hear us?
Yes.
Awesome. So I just mentioned before that the session is being recorded for your future reference and for any students who might have missed the session today. So as I said, if you're happy to keep your microphone and camera off unless you have a question, just to save the bandwidth, and we'll get started. Right, so welcome to your Orientation Week Forensic Studies course advice session. My name is Caroline O'Driscoll, and I'm one of the lecturers in forensic science here at UC. You'll also see Urian's name up on the slide, so he's another lecturer who's not joining us today, but we are also joined by Catherine from the education team.
Hi.
Who's helping us out today. So first off, I just want to give an acknowledgement to country. The University of Canberra acknowledges the Ngunnawal people, who are the traditional custodians of the lands where the Bruce campus is situated, and we wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and contribution that they make to the life of Canberra and to the region. And we also acknowledge all other First Nations peoples on whose land we gather. Okay, so hopefully you're both here because you are commencing in the Bachelor of Applied Science in Forensic Studies or one of the similar forensic studies degrees. And I'm assuming that you're both commencing this semester in that unit. So let me know if I'm telling you things you've already heard or if you're not sure about anything that we run through today. So just a quick rundown of some terms about the university, so things that you'll hear as you commence your degree pathway at the University of Canberra. So the university is structured in faculties, so different discipline areas that are kind of connected to each other. So forensic science sits within the Faculty of Science and Technology, which is the broad faculty that takes care of all of the IT, engineering and science degree streams and research streams as well. And within the faculty, we've then got our schools. So we've got the School of IT and the School of Science. So you'll hear those terms a fair bit. So then your program area is then forensic studies or science or those sorts of things. So the different courses that the School of Science take care of are all of those biomedical science, biochemistry, environmental science, and of course forensics. So that's the course, here's your bachelor's degree. And then within that course, you'll be doing a whole load of what we call units. So they're basically like subjects like you would have done at school or in other study settings. We just call them units. So we have 4 units a semester is the usual study load, and those units that you do will contribute to your major or to your minor. So basically all that means is a group of those units, a group of subjects that you do that indicate the area of study for your degree. So in the Bachelor of Applied Science, the major is forensic chemistry or forensic biology, and we have a minor in forensic science as well. So we'll talk about a study plan in a little while, but basically as long as you're doing the units that can contribute to those majors, it'll all just run pretty much by itself, and you shouldn't have to stress too much about that, but at least then you're aware of how our degrees are structured or our courses are structured. You might also hear people talking about credit points. So usually a unit is worth 3 credit points. Sometimes it's worth 6. 3 is the standard, and that's one that will take up basically a quarter of a semester, a quarter of your load for a semester, for example. And you have to do a certain number of credit points, so essentially a certain number of units in order to be eligible to graduate. But like I said, if you're following through your study plan, this kind of all happens. You don't need to worry about it too much. Okay, so within the faculty, the people that can kind of help you out, make sure that you're on the right track. The first port of call for you guys is usually going to be your program director. So that's the person that organizes your course and sort of outlines all of these different requirements for the course. So if you are ever in a spot where you're not sure about what units to take, that's the type of person you should be going to. So for the Bachelor of Applied Science and Forensic Studies and any of those other forensics degree streams, our program director is Adrian Dusting. He's lovely. Don't hesitate to reach out to him if you have any questions about a study plan or need some course advice. He'll take care of a lot of those things. We also have a first year coordinator. So our first year science coordinator is Michael Sidney. He is also lovely. And he can help with a lot of those pastoral care aspects of being a first year science student. So if you've got timetabling clash issues, something happens and you can't make it to, a week of classes, for example, and we're all very much aware of the COVID situation and the changing dynamic COVID situation. So if you are a first year science student and you, in particular, you know that whatever situation you've got is going to impact multiple units, Michael is a brilliant first port of call for those pastoral care kind of aspects. He can kind of take care of multiple units at once for you and give you some advice on your first year here and point you in the direction of some of the services that we'll talk about today and help you out with a lot of those things. So there's a couple of other people that it's probably worth pointing out, names that you might hear. Although in all likelihood you probably won't have a lot of contact with them, but if you do need them, or if you hear their names, at least you'll know who they are. So as I said, within that structure of the faculty, we're the School of Science, and our head of school, so our academic that is basically in charge of the School of Science, is Tariq. As well as Tariq, we have an Associate Dean of Research and Innovation. So that's Diane, and she takes care of our researchers, our research students and things like that. Sort of helps us out with our direction from that point of view. Tamsin is our Associate Dean Education. And so she's in charge of structuring a lot of our education streams, taking care of our curriculum review that's happening at the moment that I'll mention again in a little while, and some of those aspects. And if you do have any issues with academic integrity, or you're struggling in your education aspects of your degree, Tamsin may be a contact that you need to get in touch with. And then above, kind of adjacent to most of those people, we also have our executive dean. So as I said, we've got the school structure, and our school is part of the Faculty of Science and Technology. And Janine is our Executive Dean of Science and Technology, so our academic in charge of the entire faculty. Okay, so if you do have any questions or you forget any of this information, that's totally fine. The Ask UC website is a really good port of call for any questions that you might have. It's divided up into some really easy to navigate sections. So if you're not sure about fees, you can jump straight on the Ask UC website and go through some FAQs, so some frequently asked questions, documents on how to work out your fees. It's got information about enrollment, late enrollment and things like that. How to get your transcript when you do start to complete your units and you want to know how you're tracking through your degree, and a whole bunch of other things that you might want to read about, or you have questions about, or you're not sure where else to go. The Ask UC website is a really good first port of call. And jump in, Catherine, with anything that I'm forgetting to mention. Yeah, so I would recommend jumping there first, and that should point you in the right direction. We also run a Canvas site. So Canvas is something else that you'll hear a lot about. That's our online learning platform. So every unit has its own Canvas site. And that's where you'll go to access your course materials. So that's where lecture notes will be, where recordings of different classes will be, where you submit assignments, all of that sort of stuff. So you'll have a Canvas site for every unit that you're enrolled in, but there is also a Canvas site for course advice for the School of Science. So that's course advice more broadly for your degree in forensic studies, but also for all of the different School of Science courses. So there's a link there for that Canvas site, and I'm hoping that you've all got access to Canvas already. So the School of Science course advice site includes study plans. It's got frequently asked questions, but one of the most important features are the announcements. So if you're looking for internships when you get towards the end of your degree, if you're looking for graduate programs, networking events, workshops, a whole heap of things get posted on that course site so that we can reach as many students as possible. So you should be checking your unit Canvas sites pretty regularly, a couple of times a week, but I would also recommend just jumping into the School of Science course advice Canvas site once a week, once every 2 weeks, just to keep in touch with what type of advice is being posted there. Yeah, particularly for internship opportunities and things like that. So other ways to keep up to date with what's happening in the faculty and in the school and looking for those sorts of opportunities and events that are happening. We have some social sites for the Faculty of Science and Technology. There's a Facebook page, a Twitter page, and an Instagram. So in particular, what's really cool about this is that you'll be able to keep in touch with some of the research that's happening within the faculty. So as you move through your degree, you'll be able to see how what you're learning in the classroom applies in real life situations in research and in industry. So it's really good to keep in touch with those pages, learn a little bit more about the academics outside of the classroom environment, and see where you might want to go once you move towards the end of your degree. And also to keep in touch with events and things like that. So it's a little tricky with the situation at the moment, but we are still running on-campus events, online events, seminars and things that you can jump into and learn more about your degree, learn more about the researchers, and start to touch base with industry. Okay, on campus, there's also advice available to you. One of the most important places that you should know where it is Student Central. So it's located in Building 1. If you have been on campus, it's just adjacent to the refectory. So right in the middle of campus, you should be able to find it without too much trouble. And this, apart from the website, is your first stop, your in-person first stop for any administrative inquiry. So that could be again about fees, it could be about enrollment, it could be about welfare support, which can include, you know, a multitude of different things, including health advice as well, and inclusion and engagement, absolutely. So the Student Centre staff are excellent. You can go in, you don't need an appointment, you can just jump in and get a ticket and speak to someone, you know, that same day. And you can also email them at studentcentre@canberra.edu.au. And they'll provide all sorts of advice, point you in the right direction. If they can't answer your question immediately, they'll 100% point you in the direction of someone who can, which is really awesome. There's also sessions for dropping course advice. So the course advisors can help you set up a study plan, can help you keep track of where you're going through your degree. If you're getting partway through your degree and you start to think, oh, maybe this major's not for me, but I'm really loving this other stuff that I'm doing, they can help you out with advice around all of those things, maybe how to do more electives in that area, whatever it is that you're interested in, they can help you out with that. So they have drop-in times specifically for students within the Faculty of Science and Technology. So if you want to jump on their website, there's a link there, or search for Student Central on the UC website to make sure you're attending at the appropriate time. But as I said, drop into Student Central anytime and they'll be able to offer you that advice and set you up really well. Other things that they can help with as well is setting up your student email account. So it's really important that you have a student email account to contact basically anyone at the university. So that includes lecturers or some of these student services. It's important that you use a student email account so that we know who you are and how best to help you. But they can, so if you weren't aware of the Canvas sites, or you haven't set yourself up with a Canvas site and you're not sure how, they can help with that as well. And that is also referred to as My UC, which is the student portal that will get you onto Canvas and it will get you into basically anything that you need. That's Student Central is also where you get your ID card, and you can sort out your timetable with them as well if you have any issues with that. So they're basically your one-stop shop for getting started, which is really, really excellent. Okay, let's get into the start getting into the nitty-gritty of course advice. So if you have specific questions about the forensic aspects of your degree, Student Centre is the first place to go. And as I said, it's drop-in. You can just walk in. It's kind of like Access Canberra. If you've ever been there for your driver's license or whatever, you take a ticket. And if you take a ticket saying that you're a SciTech student, that's the best and easiest way for them to know what type of advice they're giving you and to make sure you get in contact with the right person. So they're a great one-stop shop for that. I also mentioned before, our program director is Adrian Dusting, and he is super lovely and can offer some more specific advice about your study plan, and particularly for mid-year starters, what units you want to make sure you're prioritizing in order to keep a full load if that's what you're aiming for, or to keep a part-time load without having issues down the track with prerequisites and assumed knowledge and all that sort of stuff. So he's really on top of all of those things. And as we mentioned, the faculty drop-in course advice sessions as well. If you are enrolled in one of the law or justice studies combined degrees, the forensic studies, justice studies combined degrees, or any of those streams, it's a little bit trickier for people within the Faculty of Science and Technology to offer you the best and specific advice on the law units and those aspects. So again, the Student Centre is great because they can take care of all of those things at once, and depending on your particular inquiry or your particular need, they can point you in the most specific direction. So if you know it is related specifically to one of your law units or one of those aspects, then what you want to do is take a ticket for BGL. So that's a different faculty. The law units are run out of the Faculty of Business, Government and Law. And so they have the best advice on those aspects. And there will be a different program director within that faculty who takes care of those units and the progression through those law units. So it's just something to be aware of for anyone who is in those combined course streams, that each stream is kind of managed separately by different people. So if you have a particular forensic/science inquiry, come to the Faculty of Science and Technology. If you have a particular law, justice studies inquiry, go to business, government and law. But again, the Student Centre is great. They can look at both aspects at once and help point you in the right direction if they can't sort out your problem immediately. And we also do have a SciTech student inquiries email address that you can see just down the bottom there. So that's the best way to get course advice from the Science and Technology program directors. So that's one of the first places you can go to actually get in touch with Adrian. That goes to the admin staff in the Science and Technology office, and they'll help you out with that. So what do we mean when we're talking about course advice? What are we actually trying to say? So it might sound a little bit wishy-washy, but specifically what we mean is things about your study plan. So again, what units you want to study and when, in order to make sure you're moving through in a logical sequence, and not running into trouble with prerequisites. So when we say prerequisites, what we mean is units that you need to complete, that you can only complete after you've completed other units, for example. So for example, analytical chemistry in second year, you have to have done your first year chemistry units in order to be able to take the second year chemistry units. So obviously you want to make sure you're adjusting your study plan to work with that, and it can get a little complicated. So that's what one of the aspects of course advice that you can get from any one of those services that I've mentioned. You can also apply for credit. So if you've done any study at a different institution, or any of the bridging courses and things like that, you can see if that means that you can credit a unit, so you don't have to repeat the similar content. Variations to enrollment. So if you've enrolled in a unit and then you think, oh, hang on, actually I want to enroll in a different unit, which might then make your study plan more straightforward, or you want to withdraw from a unit for any other reason, or you need to enroll late in a unit, so you've missed the start of semester, again, for whatever reason, and I think COVID is going to be one of the factors that may make some of these things a little more complicated. So if you do have anything around variations to your enrollment, or issues with your course progress, these are the types of things that the course advice sessions can help you out with. A few kind of more exciting things that they might also be able to talk to you about is applying for cross-institutional study. So if you wanted to take a unit at a different university and use that for credit towards your degree here at UC, that's something that they can talk to you about as well. And, you know, fingers crossed, in a COVID-free world, they can also talk about studying abroad or exchange programs. So obviously that's, again, a little trickier at the moment, but hopefully in the not too distant future, those things will be possible again. So those are the type of things we're talking about when we're talking about course advice. Okay, so things to keep in mind as you start to move into your degree and start to study is the way that university is structured. It's structured in 2 semesters. So if you've come straight out of school, you'll be familiar with the 4-term system. So term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4 at the end of the year. At university, we're structured in semesters. So it's only 2 semesters across the year. They are a little bit longer than the standard high school term and run for slightly different dates. So for this year, our semester 1 ran from the start of February to the start of May. At UC, we have a big break, like a gap between the 2 semesters, where we run some units as what we call a winter term. So most units in the Faculty of Science and Technology are run only in the main semesters, but sometimes there's something that runs through winter term, and that's an 8-week block-ish from the end of May to mid-July. So we're just finishing our winter term now, and you guys are starting right at the beginning of semester 2, and so that will run from next week will be week 1, starting at the beginning of August, and that will run all the way through to the end of October. There's then at the end of every semester there's a short examination period. So if you have final exams for your units, that's when they'll run, in the 2 weeks at the end of the semester. And then you've got your summer break. We do also run a summer term for some units. Again, not very many within the Faculty of Science and Technology, but there'll be a few things that you might notice on your study plan that might be offered in winter and summer term. But generally speaking, we're focused on semester 1, semester 2. So you should have a fairly lengthy break in winter and summer. There are important dates throughout those teaching periods. And so if you search for semester dates on the UC website, I look at it probably 3 times a week to remind myself what the semester dates are. So obviously the start and end of semester is important, your examination period is important, but also your census date. So towards the beginning of every semester, there's a date by which you have to finalize your enrollment. So if you need to be enrolled in your unit before census date, and withdrawing from a unit after census date becomes quite complicated as well. So it's worth knowing what that census date is and being sure that you want to stay enrolled in all of your units when that census date comes up. So that's when fees are determined, that's when numbers for units are finalized, and a whole bunch of other things like that. So I recommend checking those dates and keeping an eye on your Canvas sites, because your what we call unit conveners, the academic in charge of your unit, will usually put up some announcements on their Canvas site to make sure that you're aware of those dates coming up and getting everything squared away for those dates. The unit outlines will also have those key dates, and then other key dates as well. So when assessments are due, what week they're due throughout the semesters, all those sorts of things. The unit outline is basically the plan for a unit. It explains how that unit is structured, what your lectures will be, what classes you'll have. So if that unit has tutorials or practical classes, those are all described in the unit outline. And you can find those again either on the UC website by searching for your unit's name, or directly via the Canvas site once you've enrolled in a unit. So hopefully that makes sense. So in the Bachelor of Applied Science in Forensic Studies, which is what I presume most of you are enrolled in, this is what your study plan essentially looks like. So for a standard full-time load, you'll notice that that's 4 units per semester for the 3 years of the degree. And this is what we recommend those units are. So some of these are compulsory, and then you'll notice towards the end in year 3, you've got open electives and a restricted choice elective as well. So that's when you get to choose some of your units, because as I said before, if you want to graduate with this degree, you need to make sure you're doing the correct units for the major in forensic chemistry, major in forensic biology, and the minor in forensic studies. And so this is what it looks like for a standard full-time load for our students commencing in semester 1 anyway. So for you guys commencing in semester 2, it might look a little bit different, but you can pretty much start with those semester 2 units as they are in the study plan, do semester 1 next year, and it might just shuffle things along a little bit, but as long as you're ticking all of these units off, you should be pretty golden. And like I said, if you're not sure of how this is supposed to work, there's course advice sessions, and you can contact Adrian Dusting, your program director, as well. There is a slight caveat on this to say that this course and in fact every course in the Faculty of Science and Technology is undergoing what we call a curriculum review. So what that means is we're looking at our degrees, we're looking at our units, and basically refreshing them, updating them, making sure that they're fit for purpose, and refreshing the units. And universities go through this pretty regularly. It's not an unusual thing, but it does mean that you've enrolled at a time where things might not be as straightforward as you might expect. So as we go through that curriculum review, unit names might change, certain things might jump from unit to unit a little bit. So if you do have a part-time load, and I'll mention it again in a little while, or you think, oh, I need to enroll in that unit, but you can't find it anymore, it's probably got a different name, it's gone through the curriculum review. So again, the course advice sessions, your program director, and the other academic staff will help you out if you do end up in a little bit of confusion, because I understand it can be confusing. It's confusing for me sometimes too, so don't stress about that. But it's worth flagging that you probably want to just be checking how you're going with your units at the beginning and end of each semester, just to track where you're at with your degree study plan. So what should you enroll in this semester? Particularly if you're a part-time student, because of that curriculum review, it's going to be really important to hit some of the units that are undergoing bigger changes. So for the Bachelor of Forensic Studies, it's going to be really, really important that you enroll in Forensic Science 1 this semester and Data Analysis in Science this semester. So those 2 units are not being offered again because of the curriculum review and how things are changing a little bit. So if you miss these units now, it's really going to have a big impact on your study plan later. So if you can tick those off this semester, that would make everything much more straightforward for you, and obviously for the full-time students as well. These 2 are your priority enrollment, and then you can go back to that study plan and look at the other units that are on offer. Just because these ones aren't going to be run again, it's going to be a little bit more complicated to change them out or to find something else to fill that gap. If you're in the Bachelor of Justice Studies, Bachelor of Forensic Studies, again, these units are the ones that are really important to prioritize for the forensic side of the degree. The law units, as far as I'm aware, shouldn't be changing. So that should be pretty straightforward. You should be able to manage those as normal. Okay, so what do we mean when we're saying part-time, full-time? So the expected workload, as I said, is 4 units. That's a full-time load. Part-time could be anything from 1 unit to 3 units. So again, if you're looking at a less than 2 unit load, be really mindful that Forensic Science 1 and Data Analysis in Science won't be running in their current form again. So each unit is worth, as I said, 3 credit points, and that's kind of an arbitrary number. The 3 itself isn't particularly important for you to consider. What is important for you to consider is that a unit that's worth 3 credit points is a total workload of 150 hours over the teaching period. So not 150 hours a week, 150 hours over the teaching period, so over a semester. A semester is roughly 13 weeks, so you divide that up, it's just over 10 hours a week for each unit. So again, think about what other things you have on, whether you would like to do a part-time load or a full-time load, and see how that works best for you, considering that, again, you know, the sort of standard expected load for a 3 credit point unit is 150 hours across the teaching period. For a typical science unit, and again, I can only speak for the science units, for the law units, if you are in that combined degree stream, they might be a little bit different. But for a typical science unit, we're looking at approximately 4 contact hours a week. So 4 hours a week that you need to be in a classroom or online in a classroom working. When we say contact hours, what we mean is there's an academic or a teacher in the room with you helping to deliver content. So what we're talking about there is your lectures, your tutorials, and your practical classes. So roughly 4 contact hours a week. Some might have a little bit more, some might have a little bit less, depending on how they're structured. As well as those 4 contact hours, it's roughly 4 to 8 independent study hours a week. So you'll be delivered some content in your classes, and then you'll have to go away and do some work. So some of that will be revision of the material. Some of it is studying with the purpose of doing assessments. So that could be exams or online quizzes or other assessment pieces. Plus preparing for your classes. So if there's any work you need to do before you get into a practical session or into a tutorial, for example, any readings that are associated with your lecture content, that sort of stuff. So overall, you're looking at roughly 8 to 12 hours per week. So approximately 10 hours a week per unit you should be considering to spend on that. So if you're following along with the maths with me, if you're doing 4 units, that's 40 hours a week. So it's really important that you consider that university is essentially a full-time job. So if you have a part-time job as well, you know, this is adult education. It's up to you to try and balance those things as is best for you. And And if you are not sure how to do that, again, your course advice sessions, your program directors, all of those people in Student Central, that's how they're here to help you with that and offer advice. You know, lots of students have gone through this, so hopefully we've got the best advice to offer. But that's my recommendation, is that you should be considering, particularly in science, that your units are essentially a full-time commitment if you're doing those 4 units per semester. Again, you can go part-time, so you can do 3 units, 2 units, 1 unit a semester, totally up to you. Obviously, that means you'll take longer to get through your degree. You won't be able to fit it all into 3 years if you're only doing 1 unit a semester, but that's totally fine. Plenty of people do that. It is a balance, and again, talking to your program directors, your course advisors, and Student Central will help you know which units to pick at what time, so that you're getting through as most logically as possible. But that's for you to consider and for us to help you with if you need it. So I mentioned before the census date. So for semester 2, that's Friday the 27th of August. So that's the last day to withdraw from a unit without having a grade on your transcript or a fee for that, so a HECS help debt, for example, or a tuition fee that needs to be paid for that unit. So it's worth considering very early on whether that unit's the right one for you, and getting onto that before the census date. It's also the last day to add a unit with the approval of your lecturer or your unit convener, so the person in charge of that unit. So basically what that means is that that's the date by which you need to decide which units you're doing for that semester. So there's a couple of other things. Again, you need to, if you are looking at using a HECS help debt rather than paying your fees up front, this is the last day to submit the forms for that. Otherwise you will incur an upfront tuition fee. And yeah, submit some other fee information or a scholarship application or any of those sorts of things. So if you're not sure what you need to do by census date, check in with Student Central. For most people, it kind of happens, it's there, and it's not a big deal. It just sort of happens in the background. But if you are thinking about changing anything or you haven't submitted your forms for your fees, that's a pretty important one to jump on and get right. Okay, so coming away from the more specific course advice and stepping back to some additional student resources, as well as the Student Centre, so Student Central, who can help with specific advice regarding your course and your fees and all those sorts of good things. There's a whole heap of other resources on campus. And if you look through the university website, which there's a link for here on the screen, all of it is under that current student section, so you should be able to find it and have a browse through there. You'd be surprised what things are offered on campus and what things you might find helpful or useful or kind of interesting to jump on board with. The big ones are the library. So the library has an online component. You can browse through the catalogue to find the textbooks or readings for your units. As well as anything else that you might be interested in. If you're like me and you just enjoy picking up a textbook, the library website is the best place to start searching for some of those resources. Physically, the library is on campus. It's also just off of the central lawns, the building pretty much opposite the refectory. Again, if you've been on campus, it's pretty much opposite the refectory, right in the middle of campus, so it's not too hard to find. And again, it's got all the hard copy books in it, hard copy journals, all sorts of things like that. But they also offer a whole load of other resources and assistance for study. They have research skills training, and they're open pretty much 24/7. So you can go into the library to do your independent study pretty much at any time. So if you've got a gap between classes or you've got an assignment, you want to work somewhere quiet, the library is there. There's also study help online. You might hear about the PALS sessions. Here we go. The peer-assisted learning sessions. That information is also up on the website, and also through that School of Science course page on Canvas. And I mentioned textbooks, so there is usually a hard copy available in the library, as well as a soft copy available via the library or via your course Canvas page that you can look at online if you either can't get to the library or prefer an online copy. But if you do want to purchase a textbook, the School Locker, there's a bookshop on campus. It's also just off the central lawns, also right in the middle of campus, and you can purchase your textbooks through them, and they should have a book list of what is required. So if you have a unit that has a required textbook, you can pick it up through the School Locker. If you have units that have recommended texts, you can grab them through the library and consider whether you want to purchase them for your future study, or whether you're happy accessing them through the library as a recommended text. So again, coming back to study skills. So university, for those school leavers, university is a bit of a different environment to school, and often students find, and I certainly found when I was going through my undergraduate, that the skills that I needed to study at university weren't the same as the skills that I needed to study at school or in other aspects of life and study. So if you want some advice on that, or you need some assistance on that, particularly if you're finding that a unit is delivered in a way that you're not used to, then there are some study skills sessions that you can go to as well. So again, there's a link on the website. They run through the virtual room, so exactly like you're in now, through the Study Help Canvas site, or again the PALS virtual room and other Canvas sites. Or I think that they're going back to doing some things face-to-face on campus, and they're really, really good. Like I said, it's about putting more tools in the tool belt so that you can study the best way possible for you. So if you are finding that university is a bit of a different study environment, I really recommend just learning some new study skills and learning some different mechanisms that might help you. So more specifically for study help, there's drop-in study help. So that might include assignment writing or using referencing, and they run in the library and online. There's maths and stats help. So you might hear people talk about MASH, and they are more specifically about maths and stats questions, but across any unit. So if you're finding that there's some maths in your forensic unit that you're not familiar with, or you're finding that there's some statistics in your law unit that you're not familiar with, these guys help across every unit, anything that's maths and stats related. And they run, again, there's in-person sessions, but also through the virtual room. And most of these study programs are pretty much tailored to what you need. So if you rock up and you say, hey, I've got this assignment for this unit and I don't understand the stats in it, they'll help you with that. They'll look at it and work through it with you, which is really cool. The other big one is the peer-assisted learning sessions, the PALS sessions. So most core first-year units will have specific PALS sessions timetabled for those units. So particularly things like chemistry, first-year chemistry, first-year physics, and I think the data analysis unit as well. They have a specific timetable that's targeted at those units. So anyone who wants some extra assistance with first-year chemistry, for example, can go to the timetabled chemistry session. And they're pretty smart with their timetabling, so it should be run at times that you can make it, so that it won't clash with those units' actual contact hours. So those are the big ones, but there's all sorts of other study support and other study help. I'd also point out the academic integrity model, module rather. So that helps you be more aware of things like plagiarism and other academic integrity issues, so that you're making sure that you're referencing effectively and that you're avoiding any sort of problems there. And so I think it's really important that you're aware of that right from the beginning, and recognize what techniques to use to make sure that you're not breaching any of the academic integrity guidelines, and getting yourself into a bit of hot water there. The other one that I would point out specifically is English for uni. So if English is not your first language, or writing in an academic style in English is challenging, that's totally fine, and that's what this short course is here to help you with. So if you are finding those things challenging for you, I would really recommend doing that short course and getting some extra assistance in that area to give yourself the best shot at doing as well as you can in all of your assessment pieces. There are other specialised services as well. So aside from study help, aside from things that support you in that academic space, there's a whole bunch of other things on campus and on the website that can support you more holistically as a student, and as someone who's now taking those first steps towards a specialised career. So we have Careers UC, that's in building 1, so just nearby to the student centre, but upstairs. So they're above, I don't know, Nomad is my favourite coffee shop, so if you know where Nomad is, they're literally right above them. So they can help you with placements. So if you, as you go through your degree, you'll probably do a unit where you have to do a placement in industry, so actually going outside of the university and working in industry for a little while. Careers UC are your first stop to help you with that. They can also help with internships and finding career advice, part-time employment while you're at uni, as well as moving towards graduate programs and employment at the end of your degree. And they also do workshops and advice on how to write resumes and cover letters. They're really good. They're really helpful. So if you are looking at finding some work or finding an internship, and you just want someone to have a look over your resume, make sure you've hit all the key points, I would definitely recommend dropping in at Careers UC. They're very good and very helpful. We've also got inclusion and engagement. So particularly they provide support for students with disabilities or health conditions. And we have medical and counselling as well. So most of these services are in building 1. So I honestly would just recommend spending 15 minutes wandering through building 1 and seeing what's there. So medical and counselling, there are doctors there, there are nurses there, there are counselling services there. They are also really good. They often bulk bill for students. So if you go in with your student card and can show them that you're enrolled, then most of their services are free and confidential as well. They're medical professionals, so everything is confidential. And you can see them for anything, whether it's related to your degree or not related to your degree. They're there as doctors, nurses, counselling services, etc. And along those lines, if you have any sort of issue that is impacting on your studies, again, whether that's a physical health problem or a mental health problem or anything at all that impacts on your studies, these guys can also help you out with getting what we call a reasonable adjustment plan. So basically letting your unit conveners know that you may need some extra time or extra assistance based on what you've spoken to them about. And they don't let anyone know what it is. They just say this person might need a bit of extra time or might need some assistance accessing the lab facilities or something like that. So they're really excellent and a service that's well worth knowing about. We also have the Ngunnawal Centre for support for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, and they're also really excellent. We've got an International Student Centre for support for international students, and student welfare as well. So anything, if you are having a welfare issue within your unit, student welfare is a good place to be aware of as well. So basically, we're looking at supporting you not just in your studies and in that academic space, but holistically as a person as well, to give you the best experience and the best opportunities that we possibly can. We also have a student mentor program if you're interested in speaking to someone who's been at UC for a little bit longer. So if you're new and you would like to touch base with someone who's been around for a little while, register for the mentoring program. So you can sign up. There's a SurveyMonkey link there, or you can contact ucthrive@canberra.edu.au. This can be really good if you're new to Canberra as well, if you haven't lived here before, or you just haven't been on campus before, and you just want to see, you know, one familiar face around the place who can tell you where to go, help you find things, and share their experiences. I recommend signing up for the mentor program. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about Bruce Campus and where some of these services are. I do recognise that we're sitting in a virtual room, so it's I don't expect that too many people have necessarily been on campus yet. But when you do get on campus, these are some of the key places to look for. So this is a map of the campus, and you can see we've pointed out Building 1, which is right there in the middle, just adjacent to where the welcome lunch is marked on that map. We've got, at the top of the map, we've got forensic studies built in Building 7. So that's where I live. That's where, well, not live. Sometimes it feels like that. But that's where my office is. That's where research labs are for forensics, and where you might have some of your classes for your forensics units. Most of the classes, particularly in first year, will run in Building 27 or Building 12, which are just to the right. I was trying to think of a compass point there and it's not working for me today. So they're just across from Building 7. You can see hopefully the numbers marking Building 12 and Building 27. So 27 is marked as the science teaching labs. So those, again, is where most of your science units will run, where most of your forensics units will run, and that sort of thing. And then as you move down the campus, you'll see Building 2. You might have tutorials in Building 2. And then we move down to Building 1. Which is again where the refectory is, so where you can go for lunches on campus. It's where Student Central is, just below that. It's where careers UC are. Basically, most of those services that we've talked about are down there in Building 1. And then if we jump back across, so we've got the concourse there, which is your central lawns, right in the middle of campus. And then Building 8 there, kind of on its own in the middle, is the library. So everything's pretty essential and nice and tucked together. I'm not actually sure where the law buildings are. I think that they're down Building 9 way. Yeah, if you do happen to, you'll notice on your timetable that the rooms are marked with the building number first, and then a level that'll be your letter. And then the room number is at the end of that. So as long as you've got the right building, the right level, you should be able to find the room pretty easily. And there are maps around. Unfortunately, the numbering does seem a little bit ad hoc, but it's the age of the buildings that determines their number. So there you go, fun fact. As I mentioned before, if you do need to communicate with the university, and that can be anyone, whether you're talking to your unit conveners, your program directors, you know, whatever it happens to be, the service desk, the careers office, whoever, it's really important that you use your UC email address. So that's the email address with your student number out the front at uni.canberra.edu.au. It just lets us know that you are actually a student when you contact us, so that we know that we can help you and how best to help you. It's also really important that you're checking that email address. So you might have a personal email address already, and I understand it can be a bit annoying to be checking multiple different email accounts, but the university email account, your student email account, is where all communications from the university will go. So unit conveners will contact you there, program directors will contact you there, all, you know, everything comes through your university email address. So it's really important that you're checking that as regularly, if not more regularly, than you're checking your Canvas sites. and also really important that you're using that to communicate with people at UC. If you have any trouble with that, the IT service desk, they have a service desk at Canberra. They're also located in Building 1. So if you have a problem getting on the Wi-Fi or getting your email address up and running or anything like that, check in with those guys. Okay, super quickly, I want to touch on some career opportunities and some other things surrounding forensics. So, and we'll talk about this more in the forensic units when you get into them, but it's kind of important that you start to think about where you want to go when you finish your degree. So obviously there's forensic operations, AFP and crime scenes and state jurisdictions and all that sort of good jazz. But there's also analytical and regulatory laboratories, NMI, the National Measurements, ATGAL, the ACT Government Analytical Laboratory, all sorts of places that you can go with the skills that you will learn in your degree. Research laboratories like the CSIRO, labs monitoring food and water quality. I worked in quality assurance for the Reserve Bank, so I looked at quality assurance of banknotes, basically. All sorts of places. So don't feel like you're limited by your forensics degree. Don't forget that your skills are transferable and you are going to be an amazing scientist and an amazing forensic scientist when you finish this degree. You might see around the place signs for the National Centre for Forensic Studies. That's a UC, CIT and AFP collaborative centre. Basically what that means is that the three agencies work together to improve forensic education, and you might see that around, particularly up in Building 7. Just quickly, I wanted to also give a bit of a shout out to the Canberra Forensic Students Association. They have a Facebook page. I'm pretty sure they also now have an Instagram. And if you wanted to join the Forensic Students Association, I would really highly recommend it. It gives you opportunities to have social events while you're on campus. So again, don't forget that, yes, you're here for your academic purposes, but you're also here to network, make friends, learn things, and have a good time. So the Canberra Forensic Students Association is a really good place to start to touch base with other students and outside of your year level as well. So people that are maybe in their postgraduate phase or studying ahead of you. It's really good to get in touch with some of those people and do some of those things with them as well. Other SciTech student societies that you might be interested in joining, we've got the UC Biomedical and Medical Science Society, the UC Supporting Women in STEM Society, and the Environmental Science Society. So if you have dual interests or you just want to be involved in everything that's going on campus, I would recommend jumping into some of those science societies or the UC Supporting Women in STEM Society as well to network with some other students, go to some social events, and get involved in the campus life as much as we can when so much of it is online. I would also recommend, particularly towards the end of your degree, thinking about professional associations. So the ANZFSS, the Australian and New Zealand Forensic Science Society, is the professional association for forensic practitioners in Australia and New Zealand. I'm a member. I've been a member since my undergraduate days. That's too long to think about. But it's an amazing society. You can join as a student, so it's much cheaper as a student member compared to a professional member. And you can use their events. They have regular branch meetings, presentations, and things like that. You can use their events as an opportunity to network with other people in forensics in Australia, but also to a symposium that runs every 2 years or approximately every 2 years through the COVID phase, where people present on their research and casework that they've been doing. So it's a really good opportunity to jump on board with if you can, and particularly, as I said, towards the end of your degree. So I might stop talking now. If you have any questions, feel free to turn your microphone on and ask, or type something into the chat that should be on the right-hand side of your screen. Yeah, I'll do my best to answer your questions. I'll hang around for a few more minutes. If you're all good, you're welcome to log off. Yeah, and we might hang around for a couple of minutes in case you do have some questions. But other than that, I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the classroom very soon. And I hope you enjoy your time at UC. Thanks.
Hi, Caroline. Jenny here.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I feel like I talked for a very long time, but
I had a thought, because I requested a personalized study plan, but on my particular one, it doesn't have chemistry listed, and my major is biology. Should I continue with the 3 subjects I'm currently doing, or should I take up chemistry as well? Or did you just give us like a general study plan of this is what it may look like?
So that's just for this semester. This semester it doesn't have chemistry on the plan.
Yes.
Yeah, that's no dramas at all. So the second semester, first year chemistry unit requires you to have done the first semester chemistry unit. So it will shuffle things around for you a little bit, but the study plan is probably perfectly accurate. It's probably the best way to go. So you'll start first year chemistry in semester 1 next year, and then kind of catch up on chemistry 1B in second semester next year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, well, if there's no more questions and everyone seems to be happy to log off, we'll end the session now. And like I said, looking forward to seeing you in the classroom, and hope you have a really excellent experience through your degree at UC. Thanks, bye.